Okay, let's get rolling. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Future of Research, AI Tools for Graduate Student Success, a Bear Grads session, a webinar series for graduate student research and development. My name is Nancy Henke, and I am moderating this session today. So with that, I will get us started by introducing our speaker. Stephanie Ward is a teaching and learning librarian and assistant professor at UNC, where she has taught information literacy for over 12 years. Stephanie received her MS in Library and Information Science from Simmons University. Her research interests center around the transfer of information literacy knowledge to internet and social media use outside of academic environments, as well as incorporating artificial intelligence into the research process. And with that, I will hand it over to Stephanie.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Let me share. Okay, so glad you are all here today. I'm excited to talk to you about AI research assistants and how they can help you with your research projects. So I got interested in AI fairly early on. I had to get over my initial reluctance to have to learn something new because that sounded exhausting. And I've just mostly been experimenting with different tools, done a lot of professional development around generative AI, and have started using it in my instruction and research. So I just want to put in a caveat that I feel like I have surface level knowledge over a lot of things, but I don't know, sometimes I don't have necessarily very much in-depth knowledge on certain things. So I will certainly try to answer all questions that I can. So I have this picture of Carter Hall. This is from 1907, back when the library was in Carter Hall. And just as a reminder that research has already been changing so much, right? The internet was a big change. And now I think we're looking at AI as being a pretty big change with research and how we do research. But what I'm going to cover today is an overview of generative AI. Nothing too technical, but just some things I think it's important to keep in mind about what AI can and can't do. We'll talk then more specifically about research assistants and the different ones out there. And we'll take a deep dive into one of them, Elicit. And then we'll just talk briefly about some concerns with using these research assistants and have plenty of time at the end for any questions. So one helpful analogy that I've come across, and I know I've used this before, so I apologize if anyone's heard this before, but using AI in education, it's that you wouldn't take a forklift to the gym to lift weights, right? The whole purpose is you want to develop those muscles yourself. And I think as students and instructors, we need to think about AI that same way. There's knowledge and skills and abilities that we need to develop. So we shouldn't rely on AI is a shortcut to those skills and abilities, but at the same time, it can be a helpful tool. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into the details about how generative AI works. Hopefully some of you have explored this on your own or already know about this, but I want to make sure everyone understands that the large language models that generative AI is using are predictive and probabilistic algorithms that produce the content. So AI is thinking about what would be the next most likely word in a sentence. And because of all of its training that it's done, it can understand context and it can make a very good assumption on what the next word would be. So it can say the child raises their, and then it looks at the context and says, this is most likely hand. So it's not determining if the content is right or wrong. So what is AI good at versus what humans excel at? AI is good at summarizing content, generating ideas, acting as a tutor to help explain concepts, classifying large amounts of text or data, outlining, even helping us write first drafts. But humans are better at judging the credibility and accuracy of information, critiquing and evaluating, adhering to ethical norms, social interaction, and deep analysis. So AI can do a really good job of going through a lot of text and data and providing us with an analysis, but we're better at, figuring out what that means. What does that analysis mean? Why is it important? Is it accurate? How can we move forward and act on what AI has analyzed? And then there's the process of evaluating AI tools. We need to think about, why are we using this tool? What capabilities or limitations does this tool have? And this is with all AI tools. I'm talking a little bit more about research tools, but this kind of applies to all of them. AI tools can help ease some of the more time-consuming tasks in research, but they shouldn't drastically change how we do research overall. We should view them as added help, like we've gotten used to having spell checker to help us with our writing. So these AI tools are just another way to get some help. AI tools make all kinds of promises of doing research for you, but you still need to be involved in the research. You need to keep that human in the loop. And then it's important to determine where the AI tool is getting their information. Is it searching Semantic Scholar? Is it searching the open web? Is it just a text generator, which none of the ones we'll be talking about are, but know where it's going for its information. Think about who's funding the tool, and that can tell you a lot about some of these evaluation issues we were just mentioning. The free versions of these tools will inevitably have more limitations and possibly more concerns around them. And then certain tools might be more widely used in certain disciplines and be better suited to that field. I haven't really seen anything on this, and you all would probably know better if that is the case, but just also something to be aware of. So are there any questions about kind of just that quick overview of AI, how it works? Okay, so looking specifically at research assistants, these are AI tools that can help out during all stages of the research process. They can help with focusing a topic, finding sources, finding relationships between many sources, summarizing key findings, or getting other information from the articles. They can either send your data to a citation manager or help with citations, help with organizing, keeping notes. Some of them even offer writing help with the writing process. So there are a lot of research assistants out there, and they all operate a little differently. They have different combinations of these features. So it's helpful to explore a few of them to determine what might be most helpful for what you need. We're not going to be able to cover all the tools. I'm going to mention a few that either I'm more familiar with or I've heard more about, but there are plenty of others out there. And like I said, we'll look at one a little more in depth. I do think it can be helpful before we dive in to understand how AI is changing access to information and how we've been researching it. We looked at that picture from Carter Hall, the library, and how much research has already changed. Now AI is another step in that. So we have traditionally used keywords in databases or the internet to help us locate information. But with AI, we're now using natural language processing, and that is different. In some cases, it could be better. It's certainly easier, but it might also prove somewhat frustrating, perhaps maybe not getting us as targeted in our results. Databases have also used metadata to organize content. So authors, titles, subject headings, all of that. AI tools don't use metadata like the library databases do. Some library databases and AI research tools are trying to incorporate some metadata and the natural language processing, but from my understanding, it's been difficult and none have been overly successful at it so far. So I'm sure that will change, that metadata will become more involved with some these research assistants, but it's not at the moment. The other thing is AI research assistants are not accessing the full text content of articles that are behind paywalls. So the library subscribes to all these databases that include content that you can't get just freely on the internet. So the AI tool may be able to see that that article exists, but it can't access the full text of it. And it also seems, and this again could be changing as well, like newer articles aren't as easy for AI to locate. I've noticed really newly published stuff doesn't tend to come up in these research assistants. So most of these AI research assistants are searching Semantic Scholar, and I don't know if you all know what that is, but it's basically a free database, if you will, to open access scholarly content. And it's been traditionally in the sciences, social sciences, focused in those disciplines, but it's expanding. And I think pretty much all of the AI assistants that we'll be talking about today are searching Semantic Scholar, perhaps Google or Google Scholar, but that's where it's getting these articles. So again, it's all open access articles. And then in library databases, we've traditionally been able to repeat searches. We get consistent results. You could even have a search string saved and have a database alert you when new content mentioning that search string comes up. AI is more varied in its results. It's harder to get the exact same results. Now, what we look at today, I think it does help with that issue, but that is something that is different so far with AI. So just overall, and I probably get a little repetitive on this, but I think it's important to use AI selectively rather than exclusively. You're going to be missing out on sources and information if you rely entirely on AI. So I've broken down the research assistants out there into two categories. The first ones are assistants that can help you with extracting information and basically functioning as a database of your selected sources. And you interact with the text of these articles. And again, this is just a small number of the different research assistants that are out there. There are certainly plenty of others. Elicit, we're going to look at more in depth in just a little bit. Cite is a paid one, and it's been getting good reviews. I haven't been able to use it, but it helps you find sources from open access, and it very specifically is saying it looks for closed access, articles behind paywalls as well, even though it can't get to the full text of those articles. You can create a database of your own selected sources and interact with that. It has some limiters, some ways to limit searches or the results, which isn't always so common to research assistants. I wasn't able to find any security or privacy information about if you upload content on that one. Scholarcy is a little different. It is also a database of your selected sources, but you're interacting with one article at a time, and you can annotate, highlight, make notes, and then keep all your articles with those notes and annotations together. So that's, I think, how Scholarcy is a little different. Perplexity is perhaps a bit more for general research rather than focused scholarly research. But the cool thing, if you have a pro account, so that is the paid account, you can select from a variety of AI models to search on. So if you want to compare, like you can search on DeepSeek, the new one out of China, or on, I can't remember, I think it has like Claude, the different Claude ones. So you can try different models if you're interested in that. And you can search specifically for academic materials or just on the open internet. And it also is really good about showing the citations, where it's getting the information from. And it's also creating that personalized database. I think all of these do that. And it's cheaper than many. The free version is actually not too bad. And if you do get the pro version, the paid version, you can put settings in you can change your settings so it will remain private and won't use your interactions or anything you upload for anything outside of your own use. And then there's Perplexity. Oh, we looked at Perplexity, Affordability. So that's the next one. And it is changing its name to Logically, which is probably good because I never know how to pronounce that name. This is one I've used probably more than the others. So I've just got a couple screenshots. It is also finding sources through Semantic Scholar or Google. You can see here that you can choose from a document retrieval mode, Semantic Scholar mode, Google search mode. And you can also try out some different AI models with this one, Gemini or the Microsoft Azure. This one is meant to help you throughout the entire research process. So it also has a writing tool that you can use. You, again, are creating a database of your own sources. I've shown that here where I've put in some articles and some links. And then I can chat with this database. And so what's really helpful about this, and again, Affordability is not the only one that does this. These others do this too. But then when you're going to write and you're like, okay, I remember somebody said this, or I remember this came up, and you can interact with all of that information to try to find out where was that said or who said that, and be able to properly cite everything. So it can be really helpful. And this has citation help. This is, I think it's Elicit's connected with Zotero, but they'll often be connected with a citation manager, or they'll help you with citations as well. Okay, any questions then? Anything that we need to, I can look at that.
There is a question, but we can save that for the end. So I'll read that.
Oh.
Someone did comment, though, they've used Cite AI to help start writing something, and it does have links to the actual article cited.
Okay, yeah. And I think most of them do, like Perplexity was probably one of the first, but yes, that's good to know, especially since I haven't. Okay, so then the next set of research assistants, I've categorized them as being more geared towards relationships and connections between articles and helping you find additional sources. This can be a good way to get at those seminal sources in your field. It's like an enhanced citation tracking, essentially. Research Rabbit is pretty well known. It's free. Its interface is busy, not the best, and I'll show a screenshot in just a minute. Litmaps, I haven't been able to use. You only have a paid subscription, but evidently it's very good at looking at the entire kind of evolution of the literature in a field or discipline. And Connected Papers then also visually explores connected articles. So this is what Research Rabbit looks like. You can see how it maps it. And these generally seem to start with a couple articles. You can also do a keyword search, but it'll take an article and then you do, similar work and it shows you similar articles, the mapping of those articles. You can export for citation help, all that stuff. And Connected Papers, similar thing. You can see here I did everyday life information seeking college students. Those were my keywords I put in. It gave me a list of papers. I chose one that seemed like it was fairly relevant, and then it mapped out all the others there. So you can see that. And each node here is an academic paper related to that original paper, and they're arranged according to their similarity. And the node size is the number of citations, and the node color is the publishing year. So you can see the darker ones have more recent, and then the connecting lines show them really connect together. So that's that set of research assistants. All right, so we'll get into our Elicit demo. Okay, so like I said, Elicit, I am using the free version. It is a research assistant that does a lot of the things that all of these do. So I'm just showing you one example. They all are a little different, but have a lot of these same capabilities. I am using the free version. You can see that what the paid version gets you is you can upload more articles. You can interact with more articles. You'll see in a minute, you can get columns, and so you can get more columns if you get the paid version. But I think Elicit, even in its free version, has at least some pretty good indication of its capabilities. So the way I kind of look at Elicit is you start at the bottom and it sort of takes you through the research process. So this list of concepts can be really helpful. I've used this with students when you're trying to figure out that research question or help focus your topic. And so I was working with a student, the evolution of social studies curriculum. What I had actually typed in, how has social studies curriculum changed over time? And so then it's giving some ideas of the different concepts or ideas relating to this. These, it's saying, were just produced by the language model. It's not citing any particular source for these. Changing demographics, use of primary sources. Now we're getting into some where it's actually giving us the citation for some of these themes or concepts. This diversity in media literacy and social studies has a lot of citations. So that would be something, to take into consideration. So these are just, I think it's a nice way to get more familiar with the field, get more familiar with what's out there. So that's the list of concepts. Extract data is where you can upload your own PDFs. And again, because it's a free account, I am limited. I did look it up, and Elicit says that anything that's uploaded, it's encrypted and remains private to your account only until you choose to delete it. So anything you upload is considered private. I think your interactions aren't used in any way either. So you can interact with your papers. I think, let's try this out. I can select, I think I only have 3 in here. And then I'll say continue. And so now I can get at, do I want summary, main findings? And we'll look at this in a little more detail. And again, I can only do 2 columns in the free version, and the paid version, you can add a lot more columns. So it's basically able to extract all this information out from your sources. And we'll look at this again under find papers. because you kind of do the same thing. You can ask a research question. I will use this neuroscience and acting pedagogy. So I'm looking for sources on how neuroscience informs acting pedagogy. It's done a little summary. And then it's essentially creating a summary table for me, which is super helpful. You know, it gives me the paper, the abstract summary. Let me scroll down. I can show. So my two columns that I chose to have were main findings and methodology, but I have all these other intervention, outcome measured, limitations, study design, all kinds of things you can have it extract from the papers. Now you'll see that under methodology, it frequently says not mentioned, and it says the abstract does not provide this information. So that's telling me that Elicit doesn't have access to the full text of this article. This might be one that's behind a paywall, but at least I know it's out there and I can get an idea of what it's about. There are some filters you can try. Elicit also says for filtering, you can also just put the limiters in your natural language processing in your prompt. So you could say randomized control trials of GLP-1 published after 2020, and it would be able to take that and just find randomized control trials published after that date. I would have to upgrade to get the export, but you can export. So you can get these into citation managers. And I think that was all I wanted to mention on the fine papers. And then there's the research report. I'm not going to do a new one because it does take a while to process, and I am limited with the free account. I'm limited on how many, I think, research reports I can get. But what's really neat is, so what I asked it was, what are some differences, what did I say, between literature reviews by artificial. And what it does is it's saying evaluating question strength. And it says, and of course I haven't finished it, but I just wanted to show more precise questions work better. And you can actually even get it to help you come up with some ideas for your questions. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. Humans, so let's do that. And it'll evaluate my question strength. And again, I'm not going to actually submit this because it will. But, you know, if I wanted to look more at the methodology, comparative analysis. But let's go down to the report that I ran earlier, where I was looking into this question about creating literature reviews with AI versus humans. So it gives me this abstract about what it's find. It says in summary, the studies indicate that while AI tools can accelerate the literature review process, they often fall short in producing the in-depth, reliably referenced analysis characteristic of human reviews, methods. This is, I'll have to show a different example because this isn't the best example with the study type. But you can see there's review methods compared. So how did they, did GPT-4 versus human review, human only versus AI only. And then it gives some more, breaks down some more information down here. Thematic analysis. Just goes through all kinds of cumulative information. And then it should end up with the references at the end. Let me show another example of this that I think, and this is where you can also chat. So down here in this corner, I could interact with this report and with all these sources to get more information. And again, I was just looking at, no, I was not, this was on all of their, so they did search all, it wasn't only in my database of sources. They had this example, magnesium effects on sleep, that I think does a good job of showing a little bit more comprehensive research report feature that Elicit has. It comes up here. So you can see here, this does a better job of illustrating like how it's looking at the population, the intervention details. So how many milligrams were they looking at, outcome measures. Based on the information, it's giving you the most common magnesium dosage was 500 milligrams. It was saying, here's how it was measured. What index or ways did they measure the sleep, study design, intervention duration. So it really breaks down a lot of that information for you. So those can be really helpful. I also wanted to point out, I don't have access to it because I would need to upgrade, but this systematic review, my understanding is it guides you through creating a systematic review using a combination of papers you've uploaded and searching like Semantic Scholar. And then you can be much more specific in that screening of what data you want extracted, what criteria you want it to exclude or include articles. And you can set up an example with a small pilot set of papers, run it, say, yes, okay, this works for me. And then you can set it to work and it'll just work in the background, putting together all this information for you. So that is my understanding of this systematic review. Any questions on, I guess, elicit more specifically at this point, since we're here? Okay. Go back to this. All right. So then I just wanted to talk about how there's some concerns or issues around researchers or students using these AI tools. Intellectual property, if we're taking an article or an ebook, say, that's behind a paywall, it's, falls under copyright, and you upload it to an AI assistant, is that information then being used by that AI company? That would be a violation of copyright. That's what some of these lawsuits that are out there are about, like the New York Times found evidence that AI was producing in the exact same wording some of their content. So you do want to be aware of, again, of the parameters of the tool, how it's using anything you upload. And just keep in mind more generally, AI content can't be copyrighted as it was not created by humans. So anything that would be copyrighted has to be created by a human. And I think with all these tools, and this is tech in general these days, just a reminder that us users of AI are taking on the responsibility of how AI is being used, not the developers. So we have to be aware of these copyright issues of, all of this stuff, because the developers aren't really addressing that. Privacy is another thing to be aware of, less so with these research assistants I was just showing you, but in general, be cautious of uploading personal information or other private information. If you want to use AI for your data, say you have qualitative data and you want to put it into AI, again, just be aware of those parameters around that, make sure everything's anonymized, all of that kind of stuff. Again, if you're getting something for free, you are the product. So they'll be taking advantage of that. The bias that's inherent in these large language models, all these different tools use different large language models that were all trained on biased data. So the original training happened off of just the scraped internet. And so, for example, if there's something in your field that for a long time, it was kind of known that this was the way it was and this was accepted, but then now there's been some changes, some research changing it in recent years. AI will likely still reiterate the viewpoint that's more out there, just because that's the context that it's learned on. So I don't know how much that's really happening. I know a couple of people have mentioned times when they felt it was out there, but just something to be aware of with these research tools. And then, of course, we have to evaluate the AI generated outputs. And this is, as you become more of an expert in your field, this is where your knowledge has to come into play, because you need to be able to determine what's accurate or when it's going astray. With these research assistants, you are less likely to come across inaccurate information, because it's searching a very specific set of information, these scholarly articles. But it can still happen. You don't want to cite something incorrectly. So you want to make sure that what it's saying is really what the article is saying. Then there's just been, and this is even pre-AI, just a huge exponential growth of research output. And now there's the added concern of AI generated research articles. I don't know that this is all that big at the moment, but there was one study out of Sweden that scraped Google Scholar for papers, and it was looking for certain phrases that I guess ChatGPT tends to use in its writing. And then they eliminated any that acknowledged their use of AI, like maybe their study was about AI or something. And then they evaluated more deeply those others and ended up determining there were 139 papers that were likely GPT fabricated, most appearing in non-indexed journals, perhaps predatory journals, but there's misuse going on, so just something to be aware of. And then, as usual, access, they cost, and to get the best features, you have to pay, and that's always going to be a barrier. Technology needs, all of that kind of stuff. So I think what I would say is AI can help you get to articles. It helps you compare them. It shows you which ones you should spend more time with. Basically helps you get to that focused reading list, that focused group of articles for your project. But you still need to examine the articles themselves before using that evidence in your project or your manuscript. I do want to kind of wrap up here on a more positive note, some of the benefits, because there are benefits to these tools. When we've been traditionally searching in databases or on the internet, it's been a one-way street. You put in information and you receive a list of results back. You could revise your input, change your keywords, but there wasn't feedback, there wasn't interaction. If you're using AI properly, it's providing you with that input and feedback, and you can interact with it more. I think that's not the way a lot of people are using AI, but I know I've heard this, that you should treat AI like it's a new intern or a new research assistant. You need to explain things to it in detail and provide regular feedback to it, and it will help you get at results, more of the results you want. AI tools are great at helping remove barriers for a lot of researchers. So if you have disabilities, there's so many ways to get help with reading, with understanding articles, with writing up manuscripts. If you're a non-native English speaker, it can help make your writing better. It can provide project management and organizational help if you struggle with that. So lots of help with removing those barriers. And of course, all these benefits save time. The AI can do some of the tasks that are more tedious or organizational in nature, which can be helpful. All right, and then here's some sources, things of interest, and this PowerPoint will be in the UNC Open as well, and so you can get to those links. And then, yeah, we can just open it up here for any questions. I encourage you can email me, you can schedule that appointment with me if you ever, want to talk about AI or kind of talk through some things. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I will let the people who are attending put any questions either in the chat for me to read or unmute when they feel comfortable doing so. We did have a question from earlier. Someone asked the question, when I input into AI and ask it to rewrite something in a specific tone for me, will that then be considered as AI generated, or what is an ethical way to use that?
So if you wrote it originally and you're putting it in and saying, I want you to write this more using scholarly language or something like that, I would say that's, not too bad, because you originally wrote, like, the content and everything was originally yours, and then you're just getting some help with making it sound a little bit better. But again, you might want to still do a little editing, reread through it. Yeah, make sure it is more in your voice. And I know I've heard people say, I haven't experimented with this myself, that you can now start to train AI to write more like you. You give it lots of examples. And yeah, that's going to be an issue that I think is going to have to be dealt with. I just would reiterate that AI generated content is, you are responsible for that. AI is not the author, you are. So just kind of keeping that always in your mind.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that we have for our speaker? Okay, so one came through. In co-authored journal manuscripts, we've seen more and more requests for accounting of exactly who did what. Do you think it is wise for authors of dissertations and theses to have a statement in an appendix if AI was used and how it was used?
Yes, I do think that's the way we're heading with publishing and just with student work in general. I think most of the citation styles, APA, MLA, Chicago, I don't know that I don't know how much this is part of their set guidelines, but they're recommending that you always disclose how you used AI, what AI you used. So I think there will be statements if you, because you can't duplicate the AI, if you need to show how it was used, yeah, that would be an appendix to produce those results showing this is what AI gave me, because a reader wouldn't be able to go reproduce that. So I think it will become more like, this article was drafted with help from ChatGPT, and statements like that are going to become much more common. How exactly that's going to look, I don't know. I know they do say if you're using it in your research methodology, like you're using an AI tool to help you analyze, say, qualitative data, yeah, that can all go into your methods section and you can explain it there.
So authors need to keep track from the very beginning of how they used it and maybe some screenshots as a follow-up question?
It depends on how you're used. Like what I was showing where it was just helping you find articles, I don't know that you need to necessarily show that, but if you've had it write some content for you, like if it drafted something for you, yeah, I would probably say you need to keep track of that draft. But I think when you're using it as a tool to just help you get at some articles, that's a little bit more like just searching the databases. You're not having it do the writing for you. That's where I think I would make the distinction on where you need to start tracking more on how you're using it and keeping those results, yes, saved. Some of them now are giving you links to I don't know how open those links are, but they're giving you links to, if you've done a interaction with AI, you can then save all of that and link somebody to it.
Interesting. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for our speaker? So I have a question, and this is maybe related to an email that we actually got today. So do you know the status of UNC coming up with a university-wide policy? Or do you know if the grad school has a policy? Or do you know about certain departments? I mean, and I'm not expecting you to be all knowing of everything, but do you know the extent to which maybe some of that is at least being discussed on campus?
It is finally, yes, there is a task force that's coming up with a draft AI statement. All that the task force is doing is making recommendations. So I don't know what will end up happening at administration, but yeah, draft of a statement. And that survey that went out is from that task force surveying how is AI already being used, which tools are being used, all of that. Looking into professional development, what do we need to do for faculty and staff around AI? And then policy gaps, just, yeah, where does our policy, either it's broad enough and AI can fit in it, or where do we need to maybe make some changes? And that's looking at all the different departments across campus. I know the grad school does have an AI policy, I believe around like just their dissertations and publishing. and then of course, individual instructors have their AI policies for their classes. So you would want to talk with your instructor for each class, but for graduate students, it would be your advisor. And then, yeah, just making sure you know about that AI policy at the grad school.
It does sound like so much of it is, at least at this point, it's not hard and fast. It's so contextual. Whether something is ethical or not is contextual. Whether something is permissible or not, it's contextual. Whether something needs to be disclosed is contextual. So there's a lot of mental gymnastics that users kind of need to just be willing to go through.
Oh yes, thank you. Someone put that grad school
yes, that's
policy
excellent.
in the chat.
Thank
you.
So there was another follow-up question. ChatGPT is known for cobbling together citations from pieces of various other citations. Are any of the AI research tools that you've talked about, do you know if they've had that specific problem?
Is that where ChatGPT is kind of like the author and the journal title and article title are maybe one of them individually is legit, but not all of them are legit? Is that maybe what's
I think that's the intention.
To?
Yeah, the kind of pieces and parts of different citations coming together in one citation that technically doesn't exist in that form.
Yes. And that has been a problem. I think it's becoming less of a problem. And with these research assistants, because it is actually, they're generally always citing, taking you back to the source where that information is coming from. And then you can go double check it. So I would say you still need to double check that it says the findings for this article are this. If that's an article you want to use, you need to make sure that's true. But the citation should all be legitimate. I don't think it's just making up those citations. And I think ChatGPT is doing that a little bit less. But yeah, I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it in students' work, them doing that.
Another question came through are there any tools that can identify the AI that has been used? So I think if I'm understanding this question correctly, it's not just was AI used, but can you tell what AI was used, if I'm understanding the question correctly?
Right. Or even just, can you identify that someone wrote a paper and used AI? And unfortunately, none of the tools are able to do that yet. They don't do a very good job of it. So from everything I'm seeing, they really just don't work. And so it's, rethinking how we have students do information. And I know for graduate students, often the dissertation is the thing. And because at the undergraduate level, you can think about different ways to get at assignments, different ways to have them do things. But at the graduate school level, that written project is often the final project. And so there, I think it's, again, going back to the forklift doing the weightlifting, like that they need to come out of this program with these skills and abilities. And we're going to do the best we can to help them with that. But that, they also have to take on some that I'm not going to use AI in these certain ways because I know that would be shortcutting and not developing my own skills, my own writing, because there will be times if you go out to work, you will be doing writing without AI right there at that moment, or you will be having a discussion with some students and AI isn't going to be there to help you with that. So that's my answer to that. I know it's probably not the best answer, but at this point, that's I think where we're at.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have a hand raised. Yeah.
I'm
Stephanie?
sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just had a quick question. Not to try and be scary or anything. I've just heard past stories about people who have plagiarized in dissertations or theses. I'm not talking about a lot of stories. I can think of two that are fairly memorable, where years later the technology had advanced enough that they could easily detect the plagiarism in them, and then these people have built their careers. Obviously, the dissertation that was an early stepping stone and gotten a lot of trouble for that. So, do you think? I don't know how to quite put this question. Should students be wary about using AI with the thought that although it's not really easily detectable now, that it's going to be more easily detected in the future. That was one of my questions about the statements, because obviously if you have some kind of statement about how you used it, then you're kind of covering yourself. But if you don't, do you see a potential for people, whether it's a journal manuscript or a dissertation, do you see potential for the detection to get so much better in the future that this could come back on somebody at some point?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I know from my reading, people aren't sure that detection is going to be able to keep up with AI. They think AI is going to always, and students are going to figure out ways around the detection. But I'm imagining that could be an issue. I also think we're going to just change the whole way we look at publishing articles and writing dissertations to where I'm assuming at some point here, and I don't know how long it might take, it's going to become much more uniform in how we talk about this and how we need to address this in our written work. But there will probably be times where it won't be, someone will use it, will not disclose that they've used it. Again, I think that's for the writing step, the step where they're putting everything together. They're, they've used these AI tools to help them find the articles, compare the articles, maybe gotten some citation help, possibly even like some outlining, maybe, I don't know how to word this paragraph, some drafting help, but as long as you're putting it in your own words, then editing it enough so it's your own words. I don't know that, AI wouldn't be detected, but I don't know if there'll be a future detection tool. I think the industries, like all of that's going to have to change to address this better. I don't know if I also have heard somebody say, and I'm not sure I agree with this, that they think writing will eventually become a hybrid. Like it will become just accepted that it's a hybrid of AI and your writing. Kind of like we've just now spell check is just part of our writing. I don't know if that's going to happen. And I certainly, for students, undergraduates, K through 12, like they need to know how to write. Like, so I don't know that that's across the board, but yeah, I don't know.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from our attendees? All right. Well, if not, then I want to thank everyone who did attend today. I want to thank Stephanie Ward, our presenter. As a reminder, we will send a link to the session, the video, along with the slides after it's been processed and uploaded to our repository, UNC Open. There are a couple things I just want you to be aware of for the attendees. We have a few, this is our Bear Grads toolkit that we want you to be aware of, something that you might find helpful as you are pursuing your graduate studies. And I also am going to put in the link to the rest of the Bear Grads sessions that are happening. We have a couple more sessions that are happening this spring. The next one, if I can get my screen up. The next one is going to be on March 27th on a Thursday. Randy Larkins will be presenting about the dissertation proposal, and it's the second in a 3-part series. So we would love for anyone who's interested to sign up and join us for that session as well. So thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all. Enjoy the nice weather. Enjoy your spring break next week, and I hope you get rested and rejuvenated to come back for the last half of the semester. So thank you all.
Thank you all. Reach out if you have any other questions.